Hello everyone, it's me, Star, and welcome to part 2 of my low poly PS1 style warrior cat tutorial. Now for this part, we will be modeling our character, Forest Wind. So, this is Blender. This will be the program I will be using to make the model. Blender is completely free to use, and it is an excellent program. Like, quite a few programs that are free are genuinely not very good, but Blender is an excellent program, and it is completely free. You do not have to pay a cent to use Blender. Hi guys, it's Star from the future here, and I would like to add a quick little note that I forgot to add in when I originally recorded the first part of this tutorial. And that is a couple things. First of all, controlling the camera/view here in Blender. To rotate around, you merely need to hold the middle mouse button. To scroll, to zoom in and zoom out, use the scroll wheel, and you can also control middle mouse button to zoom in and out. And let's see, press shift and press shift and middle mouse and press down on your middle mouse button to pan it like this. And then another thing I wanted to note that I forgot to add was that to select multiple objects, simply press shift. Okay, that's it. Now we can take it back to Star from the past. Okay, so getting started on this tutorial, one thing I would recommend is to have the reference for your character handy, or whatever reference you wish to use to build the model off of. Make sure to have that handy. I have it right here for me to look at when I need to refresh myself on what the character looks like. But if you have like a second screen or like a tablet or or you have the character drawn on a piece of paper, it is good to have that sitting by you so that you can look at it and reference what the character looks like. Right, so let's jump right into this. Okay, so getting started, this little cube right here is known as the default cube. It's a default object that's added in by Blender by default when you open it up. I believe you can change it in the preferences, but I just prefer to have it because it's useful when I want to model a character. Now, starting out, gonna click on this little thing that says object mode right here. We're gonna click that. We're gonna go down to edit mode and give it a second. Okay, so, and alternatively, if you want to switch between object mode and edit mode, you can hit tab. Alright, so now that we're in edit mode, the first thing that I like to do is switch to face select, which is this little button right here. Like, this is edge select, this is face select, and this is vertex select. Vertices are these little dots on the model right here. Edges are these lines, and faces are the polygons, the faces. So, starting out, I would like to grab this face and this face right here. Then we're going to use then we're going to click on this one, the scale tool, and we're going to stretch the model out a little bit like that. Make it look a little bit more like a torso. And let's compare it to our reference real quick. Okay. Yeah, that's looking good. Maybe just a tad bit longer. And then we will switch into edge select mode. Click on that. Select this edge right here. Right click. And then click loop cut and slide. select that. But one, just like, it'll start out with one, but with if you have a mouse wheel, you just gently scroll up, and it will split into two, which I find makes it easier for making animals. But just in case you don't have a mouse with a scroll wheel, what you can do is you can make one loop cut and then another loop cut. Alright, so let's take another quick look at a reference. See how much space, make sure to look at how much space there is between the end of the front leg and the beginning of the back leg. Go off of that. See? Yeah, that looks about right to me. Oh, and then another thing that will be very helpful is go on the front, facing this way, with on this little thing right here, have the green dot sitting in front with the Z on the top and the X to the side, and click this little edge right here, select loop cut and slide, and you can right click to have it go back to its default position. Go into face select mode, hit to this button right here for toggle X-ray, select this whole half of the model and press X and delete faces. Now with that done, we hit tab to exit edit mode, go into modifier, go into this little wrench here, modifier properties, add modifier, and mirror. Now, mirroring your model is so helpful when you are making a character. Most characters tend to be symmetrical, at least for the most part. Now, if your character, like, even if their markings are asymmetrical, as long as their physical form is symmetrical, I would recommend mirroring. I would recommend cutting your model in half and just mirroring it, because that cuts your workload in half. It is so much easier to get the model even and looking right when you mirror it. Okay, so turn off X-ray, because that can be annoying when you're working sometimes. Tab back into edit mode, and now that we've gotten the cuts on the side to determine where the legs come out, let's do another cut in the front, like that, so that your character will have space between their legs. Otherwise, it'll just be a solid block coming down, and, like, legs don't really function that way. There is some space in between them where your cat's chest and belly would be. Right? Now, with that done, we go back into face select, and we click this, the one where the front leg will come out. We press shift and click here where the back leg will come out. Now, hit E on your keyboard and simply drag downward to create the start of your character's legs. Now, once again, we will consult our reference for this, because this cat has very short legs. They're a little bit shorter than their torso. So let's make these legs look nice and kind of stubby. There we go. Now that we've got basic form done, let's get in there and start doing a little bit refinement. So, go back into edge select, and let's count the joints on our character. See, we have this one where the leg comes down, and then it goes in and it bends once, and then it bends again at the paw. So then let's go in here, loop, cut, and slide, and add 2 cuts. One for where the paw comes out, and one for essentially the elbow. And hit Shift and Alt to select an entire ring of edges. And drag that one up. Okay. And now for the back leg, which for this one we will have 3: the knee, the ankle, and where the toes are. Since cats, this is technically, this right here in the front is technically their knee. Like, while we tend to say that, like, animals with digitigrade legs have backwards knees, but technically their knee isn't backwards. What we think of the backwards knee is actually the creature's ankle, and not their knee. Their knee is facing the correct direction. Alright, now, go back to loop, cut, and slide, and this one we will have 3 cuts. Now, try to make sure that your front leg and your back leg are even. It's fairly easy to kind of eyeball it, but if you want, you can press 3 on the keyboard, on the numpad, I should say, and yeah, use the grid to kind of align the cut for the front leg, cut for the back leg, and then you can use Shift, Alt, and press Shift and Alt, and then click both of the loop cuts for where the paws will come out, and then just adjust it as you please. I think right about there looks good. Okay, and I'm gonna have this one come down just a little bit. Like that. Alright, now we've got the basic cuts for the character done. Now next, what we want to do is start defining the shape of the leg. So, we can start with the front. Select the portion where essentially the lower, what would be the lower arm would be, and then select the front face where the toes would come out of the paw. And select those, and pull it back a little bit to sort of bring out that shape of like kind of sloping inward, suggesting where sort of the shoulders are. And then we select the faces in the back and potentially bring those inward a little bit. Bring this back a little bit more. Again, use Shift and Alt to select a ring of faces. And just play around with it till it looks good to you. Again, like, you know, a lot of modeling is ultimately up to, well, art in general is ultimately up to discretion of, like, tinker with it until it looks good with you, until it looks good to you, until it looks right to you. Of course, if you have like a super duper ultra awesome reference, you can try to tinker with it until it looks exactly like the reference, but you know, you don't have to. Okay, and I'm gonna slope the paw just a little bit forward like this, because, I mean, I just kind of like the way that it looks. Okay, and now for the back leg. Again, select the bottom 3 faces where because this part would be the top of the thigh. So we bring those inward. a little bit. Drawing these faces on the back, take those, and take those like that. Drawing these in a little bit more. That. Oops. Yeah, if you ever make like an errant selection in the more modern version of Blender, you can just left click in the spaces outward and it'll deselect everything. Okay, so that. Just trying to tinker with this, trying to get it to look right. Yeah, it can be kind of annoying sometimes. You just gotta play around with it. Alright, now go into edge selection and, well, first go into face, select where the toes will come out of the front of the back paw and the front paw, and hit E to extrude. Pull it out however much you want. Now, go into face select. Oh, now go into edge select and edit the edges until everything looks good to you. Okay. Let's drag this one forward. There we go, that looks much better. Yeah, make sure to drag this edge that goes around the knee forward so it looks more like a knee and less like a blobby shape. Then this a little bit. Okay. I like to kind of tuck in sort of like the bottom of the paw a little bit. I like the shape of it. I know that like cats, their paw tends to just go straight down actually, but I like the look of this more. And like, you know, ultimately it's your model, so it's up to you how you want to do it. Okay. So, now, once you have the basic shape of your model defined, remember to save it, because technology is not your friend. Alright, so let's see. There we go. And save that. It is useful to name your file after sort of like whatever character, or like if you're doing multiple characters, whatever story or universe they're in, because it can be very helpful for differentiating your files. Okay, and now select, and now we will do more refining of the shape. So select this edge right here that's in line with the leg and the foot, and do loop cut and slide, and then this edge that is in line with the front leg, loop cut and slide, and this edge that is in line with the back leg, and loop cut and slide. And now we will do a little bit of refinement to the leg to make it look less ridiculously blocky. Okay. Just select vertices, shift to select more vertices, and then press S to scale it inward, and drag to refine the shape. Always remember that this tool is your transform tool, and like, you know, if you ever want to undo anything, just press Control Z, pretty much your standard undo. This tool will rotate stuff, and this tool is your scale tool. Okay, and select this ring of vertices, just select them one at a time, then hit S, scale inward a little bit. Well, no, let's select every other vertice here, and then scale inward a little bit to help round out the shape of the leg. Now, make sure to grab these two vertices on the side and pull them inward so it doesn't, your cat doesn't have a chunky looking ankle. Unless, of course, you want your cat to have a chunky looking ankle. I mean, no judgment there. So, next, let's move on to the elbow. So, select every other vertice, leaving the one facing the front, the two facing the sides, and the one facing the back unselected. And then hit S, scale inwards till you have, just mess with the scale a little bit until you have a nice and fairly rounded looking leg. And you can do the same with the shoulder. Just select every other vertice, and then hit S, scale inward a little bit, and voila! It's a nice and rounded front leg. Now let's do the back leg. One thing that might come in handy for making the paws look a little bit more rounded is to grab these two vertices in the center front of the paw. Just push it out a little bit like that. Just like that. And then even maybe grab this one in the center of the back of the paw. Pull that out a little bit. Okay. And then take these three vertices at the top, shrink them down, pull it in a little bit, push it down a little bit, grab this one in the middle, pull it up a little bit. It provides a nice shape. And let me grab these two in the front, pull those down a little bit, and grab this, hold that up a little bit. You see? It adds a nice shape to the paw. It's one thing that is very important when you're making a low poly model is the silhouette. Since low poly models, they don't have a lot going for them in the polygon, like in the amount of polygons that they have. They're generally not very high detail, but one thing they do have going for them is a strong silhouette. So remember, that's very important. And grab this little vertice right here where the paw meets the ankle, pull that out and up a little bit. Grab every other vertice. Press S. Pull them in just a little bit, excuse me. Then grab the ones on the side, pull those in just a little bit. Grab every other vertice on the ankle, pull it in a little bit, round it out. On the knee, every other vertice, pull it in a little bit to round it out. And on the hip, grab every other vertice and pull it in a little to round it out. Now, of course, you could probably grab this one in the center of the butt to kind of pull it in and pull it up a little bit. There you go, now your character has a butt. Okay, now that we've got the legs nice and refined, save it because technology is not your friend. Grab this set of vertices on the very edge of the model at the top and pull those down. Grab these set of vertices that are next and pull those down. Then grab this one last set and pull them down. There, now your body has a nice, slightly rounded edge. We pull this vertice up in the front and make it look like that. Like that. Character a little bit more shape. And then one thing I like to do is I like to grab these couple of vertices that are in the center of the arm, where the shoulder blades would be, and I just kind of pull them up a little bit to add a little bit more definition to the body. And I like to do the same with the back, excluding this one in the very center. I pull that up a little bit, and it adds a nice, pull that out a little bit, and it adds a nice, almost kind of divot, kind of emphasizing that that's where the pelvic bone is, and this is where the shoulder blades are. Right. And save it. Technology is not your friend. Technology is never your friend. Okay. Now, always remember to save, because Blender can and will crash on you, and it will delete all of your unsaved progress. So, save early, save often. Okay, now we're going to go back to Edge Select, and we're going to add little bits of geometry that help with essentially animating the character. Because this geometry by itself, this geometry by itself, if I were to just grab this and kind of just jankily rotate it, you see, that doesn't look very good. You see that, Ben? You see that? That's nasty. So I'm gonna show you how to make it so that when your character bends, it doesn't look nasty. Right. So let me go back to Transform tool. Select this edge, loop cut and slide, and then drag it down so that it's close to the shoulder and the hips. And then on the upper part of the front leg, loop cut and slide, drag close to the shoulder, another loop cut and slide, drag close to the elbow, another loop cut and slide, drag up and close to the elbow, loop cut and slide, drag down, and then another one, and drag down towards the paw. And then with the back leg, it's the same story. Make sure you have 2 loop cuts around each area where the character's body will deform. Or essentially, sort of, the places where your characters keep accidentally selecting the knife topology tool. It's loop cut and slide. But, like, making sure that you have 2 for each of the points where your character's legs will, like, around the joints where they move and they flex. Now, with that in place, go into vertex select, and for the front part, we select this top vertice, this bottom vertice, and then the one in the center, and select, and right click, go down to merge vertices, and select at last. Top one, bottom one, middle, merge vertices, at last. Now, remember, do not select at center, because at center is a different place from where the last vertex is. Like, essentially, merging at center can be useful in some situations, but for this, I would recommend doing either at first or at last, because those are more precise, while at center is at the center of where those vertices are. Okay, so grab this one, then select where it connects to the body, do at last, grab that one where it connects to the body, at last, grab that one where it connects to the body, at last, grab the top, the bottom, the middle, and at last. Then make sure to grab this one and merge it at last. Now this is important because it reduces excessive geometry, since these are supposed to be low poly models, so ideally you want to keep the polygon count as low as possible. So, for the shoulder, select these 2 on the top and hold them out, and you can use them to sort of help define and smooth out the shoulder a little bit more, but they do serve a helpful purpose in that when the leg bends, there is extra geometry right here, so that rather than simply collapse or snap together, it can open up and it can bend and open up. So make sure to point to have the extra geometry at the point where the joint would bend. Like, if it's like, for example, in the elbow, like right here, there is not really much of a point in having these points right here, since this part of the joint just crushes inward. It doesn't really expand outward. While it does help to have it in the back here, because that point will expand outward. Okay, so remember, on the side, select the top, the bottom, the middle, and merge vertices at last. The top, the bottom, the middle, merge vertices, and at last. The top, the bottom, the middle, merge vertices, at last. Okay? And let's keep doing this. Okay, and we can define the elbow a little bit more. Okay, and now for the paw. Now, as you've noticed, generally the rule for joints is that, well, for leg joints and such, for like leg or arm joints, the rule is more or less that, like, you go outward, then inward, outward, then inward, then outward again. So, select, but for here, we select this one, and then the bottom where the paw is. And then to go at last. This one, bottom, last. This one, bottom, last. This one, bottom, and last. This one, bottom, and last. Select these three, pull them inward, push them down slightly. Then these three, pull them downward, push them outward. There you go. Now you have a nice joint for your paw to flex. Since the paw doesn't really do a lot of flexing at this point, it does it more so at this point. Okay, and now we will do the same for the back one. Except the back one would go in the opposite direction. Make sure to get this one. And remember, even when refining your model, there's never a bad time to just do little adjustments on the vertices to make everything look better. Okay, and then, okay, let's continue. Okay, now remember, when it comes to quadrupeds like this, the direction for the extra geometry for the joints goes in the opposite directions except for the paws. In the paws, the extra geometry is right around here, where the front of the leg meets the toes. Okay, and then once that looks good, make sure to save it. Alright. Now let's quickly check that with our reference image. Remember, like, if the proportions look off, or if anything looks off, you can always edit it. Just make sure to try to get all the major edits in when you're at as few polygons as possible, because the more complex the model gets, the harder it is to edit it. Alright, so now let's add that nice fluffy tail. So we go to Add, and then Cylinder. I'll go to this little thing right here, Add Cylinder, click the little arrow, and then change vertices to 6. Since this is low poly, and that's really all we need to get a basic roundish look. Select top face, select the bottom face, right click, hit poke faces. Go to the front, press 1 on the numpad, turn on X-ray, select half, and press X and delete faces. Otherwise, you'll have extra geometry and double faces, and make sure to toggle X-ray off, and like, it's not good. It creates a lot of issues with UVing, rigging, and if you decide to use the model and export it into any kind of engine or game or whatever, they generally don't like that kind of stuff. They hate it. It will probably crash. So, hover your cursor over the cylinder and hit L for linked. And it will select the whole thing. Now just drag it down. Oh, and make sure to hit clipping on your modifier for mirror. Grab this. Rotate. Hit 90. Hit the select tool. Scale it. Then grab the scale tool and just stretch it out until it looks about right to you. And then grab this bit, pull it in a little bit so that the tail moves up or down. It doesn't suddenly detach from the model. It still kind of looks like it's attached to the character. Check our reference. Tail is a little bit thinner than that. Check it again. Checking. Blank. Make it a little bit shorter. Bring that in a little bit. And grab this. Grab these. Pull them in slightly. Grab this one. Pull it out to create more of a tapered look. Then grab the edge select. Select one of the edges. Right click, loop cut and slide, and try to add at least 2 loops so that the tail can be able to kind of bend and deform and not look weird. Now, with things like limbs, you generally need sort of like extra geometry in specific places to get it to bend and look right, but with something like a tail, where it doesn't really bend in a specific place, it's more like wavy in the way that it moves, you can just get away with having sort of more even segments in the model, and it will look fine. Like, trust me, if you tried to do this to the tail, it will look extremely weird. Okay. the tail done, remember to save, then add, and then now we're going to do the head. So go to add, select cube, hold this up. Like, yes, we will be making this character's head like we made their body out of a cube. Now you might be wondering, huh, that's kind of strange. Heads are more round shaped. Cubes aren't very round. Why not use a sphere? Well, spheres kind of look a bit funky. They have pole edges, but one way you can get a head out of a cube and have it look good is first you grab your cube, then you deselect it, hover over it, press L to select link, right click, hit subdivide, then go to vertex select, make sure your cube is still selected, hit smooth vertices, set smoothing all the way to the maximum amount. And that looks nice and round now. Then go to the front, make sure to delete the extra geometry. Now let's make sure our head is the right size and in the right place. Okay. Head looks to be about the right place, but maybe let's make it a little bit larger. So on the reference image, the head is a bit awkwardly small. Alright. Now, select this bottom portion for the muzzle. And I'll show you what the problem with using a sphere is. It's grab a UV sphere, set segments to maybe 8 and 8, and then this is what you're dealing with when you make a sphere. It is significantly harder to make, unless you're sculpting, it is significantly harder to turn this into a head than it is with this, because with this all we have to do is select this one little face right here, extrude it, adjust it, pull it in, and now we have a cat head. But with this, yeah, good luck with that. So let's go ahead and delete that. Spheres are just, it's a lot more geometry and it's a lot more unwieldy to try to use that to make a head. So I would just recommend, unless you are sculpting, I would recommend using cube if you want to make your character's head. Spheres are completely fine for hair though, but this character doesn't have any hair, so I guess we'll save that for a future tutorial. So grab these two faces on the bottom of the head, press E and extrude that downward. Grab this, loop cut near the top of the head, sort of make the beginning of the neck. Kind of bring that in a little bit. Grab these faces again, pull this down, rotate it out a bit. fiddle with it and adjust it. Pull this edge in and up. Kind of fiddle with it, and even the base of your character's chest to make it fit with the neck. Grab this face, pull it up, pull it out. Grab this edge, pull vertice, pull that out. And now that still looks clunky, so let's go ahead and make another edge right there. We'll kind of, rotate that a little bit, pull it forward, and that looks significantly better. Right. Let's just adjust this a little bit. The head looks a little bit less awkward. And there you go. You now have your character's head. Go ahead and save once again. Okay. Now, since this is a cat, we should add the ears. The ears, what I like to do is I like to add a cylinder. Once again, have it at 6 vertices. Uncheck clipping. Pull it to the side so that you have 2 ears. Then you can recheck clipping. Pull it up to the head, shrink it down until it looks to be about the right size, and select face select, grab the bottom face and the top face, hit poke faces, grab one of the edges in the middle, hit blue cut edge and slide, shift, alt, and select the top faces, bring that down, scale inward a bit, the bottom faces, scale inward, up a little bit, middle, bring that down, hover over it, press L to select all, pull in just a little bit. Then, since this character just kind of has their ear just goes inward a little bit, go to transform and pull these front middle vertices inward. Honestly, we don't really need this. Let's dissolve this bottom edge. I don't think we need it. Alright. That is a nice looking ear. We're going to scale that up. That looks about right. Scale it down. Bring it in to the head. Grab this edge. Pull it. Try to grab it. Get a little finicky. Grab it and adjust it. X-ray. Grab this vertice. Let's just pull that out a little bit. There we go, so we can make that ear look a little bit more like it's connected to the head. And the ear should be a bit bigger. Alright, so that looks good. Now, hit X-ray, drag and select everything. Then you can uncheck X-ray. Hit 1 on your numpad to put it in front view. And then just drag it up so your character's standing on that nice red line. Otherwise, if you import them into anything else, it'll look like they're standing through. It'll look like they're kind of under the ground slightly. Okay, make sure to save. Alright, now that we got our character nice and modeled, let's make their UV map. Okay, so this process is fairly straightforward. Just Shift and Alt and select these edges for the inner ear. Shift Alt, select these edges for under the head. Make sure to get in the middle of the legs. Then try to separate the paw from the rest of the body, and then the bottom of the paw from the top of the paw. Just selecting around like that. Selecting like that. And select that edge right there, and that edge right there. Okay. Let's go ahead and hit right click and hit mark seam, and that will mark the seams on your model for the UV map. And let me kind of edit this front paw a little bit, make it a little bit rounder in shape. There we go. But like, the idea behind UV mapping is you're kind of cutting up your model so that you can essentially, like, it's essentially like skinning a 3D object where you're cutting up the surface so that you can lay it out flat, so that, you know, it's pretty useful for texturing if you want to have any kind of texture detail on it. Otherwise it'll look funky. So something that I like to do is I like to try to separate, the character has ears, I like to separate the inner ear from the outer ear. I like to separate the head and face from the neck and body, and then make sure this model is mirrored so I don't have to do a split down the center of the body. But it is a good idea to have a seam going down the sides of the legs. Otherwise, they're just tubes and they don't flatten out very well. So, with all of that done, you can once again head into Toggle X-ray, select everything, save just to be safe. Go hit, like, to drag this up, you just click on this little thing. When this becomes like the double arrows, just click on that, just drag it up, and then you see where this little clock is, just click on that, just hit, and then go to the UV editor. Don't be intimidated by this. Just, if you have all the seams that I told you to put and where to put them, just hit UV and unwrap. And, well, now you have the start of a good UV map. Now, drag and select everything. Hit G or grab. Click to place it down. And then hit L for linked. And then G for grab each place, each UV island, each of these pieces is called an island. Sort of just grab it and place it. I usually like to start with the head first and work my way down, and then just rotate that. Since this is the head, I like to have it where it's nice and facing to the side like that. 'Cause for me, it makes it a lot easier to texture something when it's just facing dead on like that, rather than at some awkward, obscure angle where I'm just like, how in the heck am I gonna freaking texture this? Okay, now grab the body, hit with like hover over it, press L for linked, then G for grab, and then hit R for rotate. Rotate that around, then just left click when you've found a good place, then hit G for grab again. Just put that in a nice, good area where you think it will look good. And then this is the tail, just L for linked, G for grab, just put that to the side so that you can know that the tail faces this way. Here is the neck, link, grab, and R for rotate, G for grab, put that on a nice space for that. This is the outer ear, linked, G for grab, rotate that. Inner ear, L for link, G for grab, drag it in, well, move it in, rotate it with R, and get it in a nice place. L for linked, G for grab, move this to a nice place. Then the other paw. Try to make sure none of your UVs overlap, because each of these islands essentially represents areas on your model where like the texture will be placed. So if your UV overlaps, anything that is placed in that overlapping area will appear in both places that the UV islands represent. So if you want two areas of your mesh to share the exact same bit of the texture, then yes, that is good to have them like stacked on top of each other. But if you don't, make sure that they aren't overlapping. Grab this one, sit down here. A little bit more room. Yeah, once you start placing more stuff in here, you start running out of room. So I'm gonna move this. It's a little bit awkward, but it's not too bad. And then here are the bottom of the paws. Grab those. That one. And then that. Now another thing that you want to do for your UV map is make sure that there is space in between the islands for any texture bleeding, because otherwise it will create all sorts of havoc on your model, and it just really looks incredibly ugly and unprofessional. So get that nice and done. With all of that, once again, save, then hit UV, export UV layout. I like to save my textures at 2048 resolution. Try to save them out as square. Normally for PS1 models, they had a very small texture resolution, but I like to save my UV maps out and my textures out as at a high resolution, because it's easier to downscale a texture than it is to upscale one. So save this out as forest wind. Keep saying wing. forest wind text or texture. Export UV layout. Then we can grab that, drag it back down, turn off X-ray, and go back into object mode. And now that we have UV mapped and modeled our model, we can hit apply on the mirror modifier, and now it is one whole solid model. And then for one final touch, right click and shade smooth. And there you go. There is our lovely friendo, forest wind. Now let's go ahead and save that one last time. And in the next part of the tutorial, we shall cover texturing. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you then. Bye.